Well, let's get more now on this mandatory behaviour code to be imposed on the likes of Woolworths, Coles and Aldi. The government has confirmed it'll impose fines of up to $10 million if the supermarkets mistreat suppliers. The code was the main recommendation from a review conducted by former Labor Minister Craig Emerson. So let's get some reaction now. Tanya Barden is the CEO of the Australian Food and Grocery Council, representing those who supply the big supermarkets. Tanya Barden, a mandatory code, significant penalties. What's your reaction to this?
The Food and Grocery Council, we represent manufacturers and they've been complying with this code for many years. It's a really important tool that they have, and so seeing a strengthening of this by making the code mandatory and having penalties, they're two important aspects of it, but there's also a lot of other elements of it that are equally, if not more important, that we're really keen to understand the details of.
You say it's crucial the supermarkets have agreed to arbitration. Why is this an important step?
Under a mandatory code, the suppliers really have to go to a court in order to raise a complaint. And that's one of the concerns that we've had with the mandatory code. Now, the government has addressed this by getting the retailers to agree to independent arbitration, so that then suppliers have an alternate mechanism which is quicker, it's more cost effective, and has the ability for damages to be paid to the supplier up to $5 million. So that's been a difficult task, getting the retailers to the table to agree on that. They've done that. We commend them for it, and we commend the government for pushing that issue through.
So that's part of the change for your members under these changes. What else will change for them?
There's a number of really detailed provisions in the code that we need to understand. It's only just been released recently. But really importantly, the code is there to improve trust, transparency, certainty, and to provide an effective disputes mechanism for suppliers. So one of the things that Dr. Emerson has recognised is the fear of retribution that suppliers face. So it's really welcomed that that is something that's understood, and that the new independent disputes process will help to overcome that, as well as some other new clauses that have been inserted into the code and specific penalties that address retribution fears.
And will it address those less obvious forms of retribution as well, such as products being placed on different shelves, for example?
So retribution can take many forms. It may happen over time. It may happen outside of the product that you've got a negotiation difference around. And so having mechanisms that are multiple and that allow suppliers to be able to go and talk to someone independent where they've got these concerns and fears is really important. And then the ability to be able to monitor. So the retailers will be required to monitor where there's been any issue or concern that's been raised by a supplier to make sure that there isn't any retribution.
Will these changes provide a better deal for shoppers as well, do you think?
Look, the aim of this code, as I said, was to address certainty, trust, transparency between supermarket retailers and suppliers. The aim isn't in the short term to address supermarket pricing. That's really the subject of other inquiries that are going on, such as the ACCC investigation. But what I would say is that obviously the Senate inquiry, the ACCC inquiry, these are all putting pressure on the supermarkets to reduce the price for the shoppers. This is at a time when suppliers are still facing significant cost increases. And so we need to get the balance right and make sure that there's a sharing of risk and reward across the supply chain, and that as the retail prices start to come down in some areas, that suppliers aren't the ones bearing the brunt of that. And I think this stronger code, if it can be enacted as quickly as possible, will give the suppliers more confidence that they're not going to be the ones that are solely responsible for the prices coming down for consumers.
Picking up on that, it's yet to be legislated. The government says it'll act swiftly on this. Are you confident the changes will be implemented soon?
Yeah, we take the government's word on that and we commend them for committing to implement this very quickly. The benefit is that it's a regulation, it doesn't need to go through legislation apart from the penalties. So there's no reason that the government can't act very quickly on this, and we encourage them to do so.
In terms of the fines, the supermarkets need to deal with suppliers lawfully and in good faith. Is this idea of good faith clear enough?
Good faith is quite a broad clause within the code, and there is a degree of definition and explanation around that. So it's actually one that's used quite often from the supplier's perspective. We haven't had a chance to delve into any specific changes around that, so we'll be looking at that in more detail.
We know that Woolworths wanted Bunnings and Chemist Warehouse included in this. What's your opinion? Should they have been?
The code is there to deal with the significant market concentration of the supermarkets, mainly Coles and Woolworths, as well as Aldi and Metcash, and the effect of that concentration on an imbalance in negotiating power. Most of the complaints that we hear are against the major two supermarkets, and that's why the code has been focused on them to date. As those others, such as Bunnings and Chemist Warehouse, Amazon and others, start to grow in size, then they will be captured. There is a $5 billion turnover threshold, but for now, the code review has found that the major supermarkets are the ones that the issues are with, and that's where the primary responsibility lies. We do welcome over time it broadening out to cover some of those issues, but as I say, it's not where the major concerns have been to date.
And Tanya Barden, on that concentration, the government has rejected breakup powers. The review said that it wouldn't work. Do you agree with that? Is that something that you'd like to see further investigated?
For now, we think a stronger food and grocery code of conduct, stronger merger laws are the two mechanisms that we need to get into place quickly, and then we need to reassess how effective they are. With divestiture powers, one of the concerns we had around that was that it means you're relying on a supplier going to court and a court finding that the breach was so egregious that they're going to break up the supermarkets. Now, that's a very high bar. It also doesn't help that particular supplier by giving them damages for any costs or damage incurred. So look, we think that the more practical, tangible way to address these concerns is through the code, and we need to monitor this over time to see if that's being effective and if the stronger merger laws are being affected before jumping to divestiture powers.
Tanya Barden, CEO of the Australian Food and Grocery Council, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for the time.